Before I call the honourable member for Leeds Central and Headingley to ask his urgent question, I must advise the House that although the matter is not yet sub judice, for the purpose of this House rules related to these matters, members should exercise care in what they say about a live criminal investigation. I urge members to avoid speculating about the guilt or innocence of any person, the identity of the person who has been arrested or the motive for the attacks. Members should take care not to say anything in this House that might prejudice a criminal trial. Members may ask about the emergency services, the response to the attacks, the support for victims, families and other connected matters, but I do urge the utmost caution in avoiding any remarks that might be prejudicial. I now call Alex Sobel to ask his urgent question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Home Department, she will make a statement on the incident that occurred in Headingley on the 26th of April.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, can I thank my honourable friend for securing this urgent question? And may I begin by expressing that my thoughts and prayers are with the victims of this horrific, violent incident in Headingley, Leeds, on Saturday. I understand the shock that this incident has caused amongst the local community in Headingley, and I understand that my honourable friend, the member for Leeds Central and Headingley, will want to get rapid answers for the constituents that he represents. At the same time, as you have pointed out, Mr. Speaker, this is a live police investigation, and we all have a responsibility not to say anything that would interfere with that investigation or any legal proceedings that may follow from that investigation. But for the benefit of the House, I will just recap what the police have themselves said about the incident and the ongoing investigation. On the afternoon of Saturday the 26th of April, West Yorkshire Police were called to reports of a male on Otley Road, Headingley, Leeds, in possession of a crossbow and a firearm. Armed police arrived at the scene at 14:53 hours, where the suspect was found with a self-inflicted injury. He was taken to hospital and remains in a life-threatening condition. On arrival, officers also found 2 members of the public who were injured and admitted to hospital. One of the victims has now been discharged from hospital. The other has undergone surgery after suffering life-threatening injuries, and our thoughts remain with the victims and their families. Counter-terrorism police North East have taken the lead for the investigation into this attack and are now working with the West Yorkshire Police. As I've already said, this is an ongoing investigation and I cannot comment on particular details of the case other than to note that we must allow the police time and space to conduct their investigation. Having said that, we are very aware of concerns about the use of crossbows in violent attacks. We share this concern, and last week the Government tabled amendments to the Crime and Policing Bill to strengthen age verification controls on both the online sale and delivery of crossbows. The previous Government held a call for evidence on licensing systems that could apply to crossbows last year, to which they did not respond. As part of our wider work to get dangerous and lethal weapons off Britain's streets, we will shortly be publishing our response to that consultation, setting out how we plan to go further to limit the availability and accessibility of crossbows in this country.
So,
Mr. Speaker, I'm very grateful to you for granting this urgent question after the harrowing attack in my community in Headingley on Saturday. My community is still reeling in shock and disbelief at the horrific act of violence occurred in our midst on Saturday afternoon. I'd like to begin by expressing my concern and sending best wishes for the recovery of the 2 women who were harmed in this egregious attack this weekend. I'd also like to express my gratitude to the heroic efforts of the members of the public and our local community who intervened. The details of how they helped are still emerging, but I already know that without them, we may have had a far worse tragedy. I'd also like to thank all the emergency services and Leeds City Council for their swift response and for ensuring the situation was brought under control and isolated. The fact this most heinous crime was committed against 2 women isn't lost on anyone, and I'd like to thank West Yorkshire Police for committing to increase their presence in the area and working to ensure the safety of violence against women and girls. Safety of women and girls, sorry. The response to this horrific attack is testament to the Headingley community, Leeds and the people of West Yorkshire. Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you that our community is strong. and will show that we remain united and will not allow this to divide us. Mr. Speaker, the key suspect was carrying a range of lethal weapons when the attack was carried out. The two victims were both shot by crossbows, a weapon that has been used in murders before. I know the Home Office issued a call for evidence on strengthening controls on crossbows and public safety grounds, which ran from the 14th of February to 9th of April last year. Will the Minister now publish a response on providing further controls on the use, ownership and supply of crossbows after the horrifying attack on Saturday? We need to see action taken on these lethal weapons. I know that police inquiries are ongoing, but what we do know is that this is a critical incident and the lead force is the counter-terrorism police. However, for an individual to plan and carry out such a vile attack on two women does require us to ask questions of how our intelligence gathering operated prior to this hideous attack. Can the Minister reassure me, my community and the House there will be a thorough investigation into what intelligence gathering had been undertaken on the suspect and if lessons can be learned for the safety and security of the public? Mr. Speaker, I'd like to finish once more by paying tribute to the local community in the area that I'm proud to call home and thank them for their bravery and kindness, as well as our excellent emergency services in West Yorkshire. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, can I thank my honourable friend for those comments? And he's absolutely right to pay tribute to the community and the members of the public who came forward when that attack was happening, and of course the emergency services who, as ever, run towards danger when many others run in the opposite direction. So I think it's absolutely right that we pay tribute in the way that my honourable friend has done. And I hope that I've offered him some reassurance in the comments I made in response to his urgent question about the government's approach towards crossbows and what more we want to do. And as I said, we will be publishing our response to the consultation that took place last year very shortly. And as to the point around the investigation, that's clearly underway, and I know that it will be a very thorough investigation and a very comprehensive investigation, and that all issues that my honourable friend has raised will be looked at.
Minister Matt Vickers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Everybody will have found the reports about the severity of this incident deeply concerning. I'd like to express my deepest sympathies to those who were injured during this horrendous attack. Our thoughts are with them at this time. I'd also like to thank the public, the police and the emergency services more broadly for their work in responding to the incident. There are two aspects I'd like to touch on with the Minister. West Yorkshire Police have said that the counter-terrorism police are involved in responding to the incident. We've heard from the independent reviewer of terror legislation about the importance of not allowing an information vacuum to form. Will the Minister ensure that there is as much transparency as possible regarding the release of information about this case? And secondly, I'm aware that in the aftermath of the incident, although the police are not seeking anyone else in connection with it, there'll be an increased police presence across Headingley and the broader city of Leeds in the coming days and weeks. Given this horrific attack was on two young women, I'd be grateful if the Minister could outline whether they've had any discussions about what that presence will entail and what measures are being taken, in particular, to ensure that young women and girls feel safe in Leeds following this incident. Thanks.
Well, I'm grateful to the comments of the Shadow Minister, and he's absolutely right to praise the public and of Headingley and the emergency services. And clearly, the policing presence that's now in Headingley and across Leeds, of course, that's an operational matter for the Chief Constable, and I know that he will be very mindful of the needs of that community in making clear what police presence needs to happen. In terms of the issue around information and the flow of information and being transparent, of course, I'm mindful of that, but again, this is a live police investigation. The police and they make decisions about what information is disclosed at the appropriate time, and as I've said, and as the Speaker has also set out to this House, how important it is that there isn't speculation at this stage and that we allow the police to do their job and to investigate, look at the evidence and take the appropriate action as and when.
Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd firstly like to echo the comments of my honourable friend for Leeds Central and Headingley in expressing my deepest sympathies to the families of the victims of this horrendous crime. The West Yorkshire Police are currently investigating two recent murders in my own constituency of Shipley. And I would really just like to ask my right honourable friend if she could just assure me that West Yorkshire Police do have the necessary resources that they need to be investigating not only this most recent incident in Headingley, but obviously the wider serious crime that's going on at the moment in this area. Thank you.
Minister.
Well, I'm very grateful for the comments of my honourable friend, and can I reassure her that yes, all police forces have seen additional resources put in this new financial year. Up to 19.6 billion is going into policing. We know that there are challenges in policing, but I've every confidence that West Yorkshire Police have the resources they need. I know they have a very effective mayor and deputy mayor who leads for policing, and they make the case for their police force very well indeed.
The Liberal Democrat spokesperson, Lisa Smart.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. No one should have to live in fear of such horrific violence. The appalling events in Headingley on Saturday have left a community shocked and 2 women with really serious injuries. My thoughts and those of all the Liberal Democrats are, of course, with the victims, their families and all of those affected by a crime of such awful brutality. This is yet another devastating example of the violence faced by women and girls across the country, which we must all work to end. It is also yet another example of a violent attack where a crossbow has been used, one of too many in recent years. Among others, my honourable friend, the member for Richmond Park, has urged the government to review and strengthen crossbow regulations. And I note the government's amendments to the Crime and Policing Bill, including new clause 70, and also the Minister's response to the honourable member for Leeds Central and Headingley. But could the Minister confirm when the government's formal response to the call for evidence will be published?
Minister.
Well, I'm grateful for the comments from the honourable member who leads for the Liberal Democrats, and of course we all are committed to ensuring that violence against women and girls is halved over the course of the next decade, and my honourable friend who sits with me on the Treasury bench today is leading on that. It's a really important strand of the Safer Streets mission. On the crossbow issue, I'm pleased to hear the support from the Liberal Democrats for the work that's ongoing at the moment and in the Crime and Policing Bill in particular. It will be very shortly that we will bring this approach from the government and response to the consultation forward. Can I just say I've taken a particular interest in this issue, and I've met with families that have been affected by crossbow violence attacks. Laura Sugden up in Driffield, who lost her partner Shane Gilmore, I met recently, and just this morning I met Joan Whelan, whose partner Dave Peck was killed in 2022 by someone using a crossbow. So I am very aware of the need for action on this particular issue.
Albert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And also, please, may I wish the victims of the Headingley attack a full recovery. My thoughts are with their friends and family and the community. Just this morning, I welcomed Joan Whelan to Westminster to meet with the Minister of State for Crime, Policing and Fire, and I thank the Minister for her time and sage advice and counsel. Following the tragic loss of her beloved partner, Dave Peck, Dave was fatally struck by bolts fired from a crossbow into an open, busy pub in Westcliff in my constituency of South and East and Rochford in 2022. Dave was affectionately known as West Ham Dave, a larger-than-life character. Dave and Joan together had 22 grandchildren who now no longer have their granddad in their lives. The crossbow was purchased by a resident with paranoid schizophrenia who had a history of mental health struggles. It was purchased freely, unchecked, unlicensed and on the internet. Does the Secretary of State agree that more needs to be done to stop crossbows falling into the wrong hands, and can she join me in thanking Joan for her bravery in sharing her story? Thank you.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for bringing Joan to see me today, and she was an incredibly brave and impressive person to hear directly from about the impact of what it had meant to her and her family and the 22 grandchildren, the loss of Dave. So I think my honourable friend, in just the few words he said then, make the case very effectively for further changes around crossbows and the law around them.
Charlie Joyce.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister mentioned her meeting with Laura Sugden, and may I pay tribute to Laura for the campaigning she is doing on this. It's now over 7 years ago since Anthony Lawrence brutally murdered her partner, Shane Gilman. Laura herself was attacked by a crossbow and was pregnant at the time. So I know that a response is coming to the consultation, but can she perhaps give us more detail on the timetable of that response and what likely next steps we're going to see?
I'd also like to pay tribute to Laura, an incredibly brave woman faced with the horrific attack that happened when the neighbour got through the roof space and into the house and attacked her and her partner. I can't give a specific date. I used to really dislike this when I was sitting on those benches and the government minister would say shortly or imminently, but I can guarantee that I'm doing my very best to make sure that this is as soon as possible that we will respond to the consultation from last year.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I express my sympathies and those of the people of Central Ayrshire to the victims and those affected by this horrific attack? And can I note the presence of the Mayor of West Yorkshire in the gallery today? Does the Minister support the excellent work the Mayor is leading to keep women and girls safe in West Yorkshire? And can she commit to working with mayors and police and crime commissioners across the country to tackle the rise of misogyny?
Mr. Speaker, but I am very conscious of the excellent work that the Mayor of West Yorkshire carries out and her Deputy Alison Lowe, and that violence against women and girls and that real commitment to making policies that will have a dramatic effect on the women and girls of West Yorkshire.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have unhinged individuals roaming our streets and towns and cities with crossbows, with knives, with swords, with dangerous weapons, and no tinkering around legislation or licensing will stop this madness. Isn't it about time we had mandatory jail sentences for people carrying these weapons?
Yeah.
I think the Honourable Gentleman raises a really important point, and I think we are working in government as quickly as possible to understand and identify the nature and scale of a growing cohort of predominantly young men and boys who are fixated with violence. We want to make sure that we have a proper multi-agency interventions and approach to manage the risks they pose. And the Prime Minister has already set out that if the law needs to change to recognise this new and dangerous threat, then we will change it and we will do so quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the Minister for coming forward and making a response to this urgent question. And I want to put on record my deepest sympathies to the victims and their families of this terrible incident. I think listening to members across the House talk about victims of crossbow attacks, I find the whole issue very shocking, particularly someone who visits Westcliff on a regular basis. I wondered, in light of these terrible attacks, if there's more we can do as a government to ensure that we support victims and families of these terrible attacks.
Well, my honourable friend raises a really important issue about how victims of these attacks are supported. And of course, as I've discussed this morning, I was talking with Joan about the support that she received after that horrific attack on Dave Peck. There is more to do on this, and it's certainly something that I'm very aware of. And again, with Laura Sugden, the support and help that she's had since she was attacked by a crossbow. But there is more to do, and I'll certainly be talking to my counterpart in the Ministry of Justice around that support.
Dr. Andrew Morrison.
Mr. Speaker, does the Minister share my surprise at just how easy it is to get hold of one of these weapons? A few clicks buys you a Guillotine X Plus compound crossbow for £324.91 plus £6.99 delivery, or a Jaguar Deluxe for £129.95 delivery free. These things are as deadly as shotguns, and yet we don't licence them as such. Will the Minister, in the plans that she has heralded, consider very seriously going down the same route as other European countries and make sure these deadly weapons are properly controlled?
I think in the few sentences that the Right Honourable Gentleman just uttered to the House, he makes a very compelling case for why change is needed in this area. So I can't go any further today, but I hear what he says, and I share his concern about the fact that you can just go online and in a few clicks buy one of these items.
Tom Gorman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've had a number of people mention to me that they themselves have been to university in Leeds, or they still have kids who live in the local area in Harrogate who go to university in Leeds. It's got quite a high density and population of students. I just wondered what conversations the government had with local authorities and other partners to make sure that university students and parents were feeling supported and that there were reassurances. And I'd just like to also make sure that I echo sentiments of members across the House in terms of thanks to emergency services and those affected.
It's a very important point about public reassurance and confidence about going out in local communities, and I know West Yorkshire Police are doing that through the extra police presence. I know that my honourable friend, the Member of Parliament for that area, will be working with community groups and the university, and also I know the Home Secretary and the Security Minister have also been involved over the weekend in this incident and being properly briefed. So I think across the board there is engagement, and all the key stakeholders are part of those conversations.
Robbins.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I join the rest of the House in bringing those victims of this horrific crime a speedy recovery. I note that the counter-terrorism police have been involved in regards to intelligence gathering, and it is the concern about that online and incitement to violence. Would the Minister join me in condemning the recent statement by the so-called Irish rap band NECAP, where it's been actually reported that they have said to their audience that they should kill their local MP and the only good Tory is a dead Tory?
Yes, of course, I would condemn any comments like that online. Clearly, I cannot comment, if we're talking about this particular case today, about anything that was posted online in relation to this case. But the Honourable Gentleman will know that we work in partnership with technology companies to ensure that they understand their responsibilities to tackle illegal content on their platforms, and we've been clear that they need to act quickly to identify and remove the content from their platforms once posted. More generally, the Online Safety Act places duties on platforms to swiftly identify and remove illegal content, which we expect them to abide by. And furthermore, these platforms have a moral responsibility to keep their users safe and the general public safe, and we expect them to take all reasonable steps to do so.
Can I say it's a very important that matter is raised? I'm not quite sure it fitted in here. Might have been good to do a point of order at the end, because I do think it was something that was going to be raised in the House. Right, I'm sure that Jim Shannon might be starting. Jim Shannon.
I certainly will, Mr Speaker. Thank you. And thank the Minister very much for the answers. Our thoughts are always with the victims and indeed with the police officers and the emergency services who responded in such a positive way. It is the belief of others, and indeed myself, that incidents like this highlight the fact that the police services, and particularly the community police officers, need to be seen more on the ground to ensure that police officers are able to look at recurring incidents and the use of crossbows, and to put in place policing to ensure public safety and send the message that the police are on the ground and close by, and understand that this needs to be the case not just in Headingley but indeed across all of this great United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Thank you.
And the Honourable Gentleman makes the case for what this government is doing, which is neighbourhood policing, putting that 13,000 police officers and PCSOs back into our local areas, into our communities, to not only provide that police presence, but that public reassurance, which is so important to the people that we all represent.
That completes the urgent question. Let the front benches change up. Question, Shadow Secretary of State Chris Folt.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To ask the Home Secretary to make a statement on the child rape gang scandal.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Shadow Home Secretary was away when I updated the House on the Government's response to the independent national inquiry into child sexual abuse and on the action we are taking to investigate and tackle child grooming gangs across the country. As I have said many times, people up and down this country are understandably horrified by the appalling crimes committed by despicable grooming gangs. Children subjected to the most unthinkable sexual violence, frontline services, local authorities, elected politicians turned away or even blamed the children rather than their rapists. I know this because I speak to victims week in, week out, and have done for decades. This government is determined to get to the truth of both historic and current grooming gangs, to ensure perpetrators are punished and to deliver justice and accountability for victims and survivors. That is why we are pressing ahead with key recommendations of the independent inquiry, including the mandatory duty to report. Baroness Casey, who conducted a no-holds-barred review into grooming gangs offending in Rotherham, is currently overseeing a national audit on group-based child sexual exploitation and abuse. The audit will identify what further work is needed. It is looking at the scale, nature and profile of group-based abuse, including the characteristics of offenders. It will conclude in the coming weeks, and I have already committed to publishing the findings. The Home Secretary and I have always been clear that the first priority in tackling this heinous offending is getting perpetrators behind bars and getting justice for the victims and survivors. That is why all police forces in England and Wales have been asked to review historic grooming gangs investigations that were closed with no further action, and to pursue new lines of inquiry and reopen investigations where appropriate. We are also going further than ever before to support local areas to hold independent local inquiries, which can drive action and accountability at a local level. That is what inquiries in Telford, Manchester and Rotherham have delivered effectively, and that is the approach we would like to see rolled out elsewhere. In January, we said we would support 5 local inquiries. We are moving ahead with that commitment and have confirmed that funding will be made available to Oldham Council as part of this work. We are currently working with a range of experts to develop a best practice local inquiries framework so that local areas that conduct inquiries do so in a way that actually delivers justice, accountability and truth, commanding the support of victims and survivors. Our focus is on delivering meaningful, tangible change for victims and survivors. That means delivering on key recommendations of Professor Jay's national inquiry. It means getting perpetrators behind bars and, most importantly of all, protecting children today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The whole nation is shocked by the rape gang scandal. Thousands of young teenage girls systematically raped over years by men of predominantly Pakistani heritage. Girls like Jane, who was repeatedly gang raped at the age of just 12. The police found her being abused by an illegal immigrant. But instead of arresting the illegal immigrant, they arrested her. That is sick. The last government took action by setting up the wider J inquiry and the Grooming Gangs Task Force. But the truth is, that is not enough. There is now clear evidence that those in authority covered up these rapes because the perpetrators were mainly of Pakistani heritage. Last week, I met retired Detective Chief Inspector John Pecos. In Bradford, he witnessed the abuse of a young girl in a car, but he was then instructed by a Chief Superintendent to drop the matter to avoid antagonising Bradford's Muslim community. Covering up the rape of young girls for that reason is one of the most immoral things I have ever heard. Yet not a single person, not one, has ever been held to account for these cover-ups. That is why we need a national statutory public inquiry which can compel production of evidence. Even last year, authorities in Manchester were still covering up, leading to the chairs of the local Manchester inquiry to resign. 5 local inquiries, which can't compel the production of evidence, just won't do. 50 towns are affected, not 5. And Bradford, where some of the worst abuse occurred, is refusing to cooperate with any inquiry at all. So there won't be an inquiry in Bradford because their council is refusing to participate. Now, Mr. Speaker, the Home Secretary promised on the 16th of January that Baroness Casey would complete a rapid audit within 3 months. Well, 3 months has now passed and we have heard nothing whatsoever. Almost there. The government said there would be 5 local inquiries, but we know nothing about 4 of them, and the man charged with setting them up, Tom Crowther, said to the Home Affairs Committee on the 1st of this month that he had been sidelined by the minister over there and, quote, did not know what was going on. Now, finally, Mr. Speaker, I recently met Marlon West, whose daughter was trafficked, abused and raped by mainly Asian men, including in Bradford. He said this government should be ashamed of themselves and they should hold a national inquiry. Jane, who was trafficked and gang raped at 12, also wants a statutory national inquiry. Labour Mayor Andy Burnham, Harriet Harman and the Labour MP for Rotherham all agree. So will the Minister do what they and Marlon and Jane are all begging for and hold that national inquiry so those who covered up that scandal are at last held to account?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Shadow Home Secretary, and I say that I don't need to read out the things that were found in other local inquiries to know, because I speak to the victims. I spoke to some of the victims of grooming gangs this morning. I will speak to some more tomorrow. I have spoken to them from Oxford, from Birmingham, from Rochdale, from Rotherham, from Oldham. I know exactly the issue of the cover-up, as does everybody already, because of the many local inquiries that have told us that this happened and the national inquiry that has told us that there were cover-ups. What we must focus on is making sure, like happened in Telford, that there is a local process of accountability that actually changes things on the ground, and that is what I will do. I have been trying to change the issue of this on the ground for all of my life, since the very first time I ever met a girl who had been ignored. I will continue to do that and do what is right for the victims.
Richard.
Mr Speaker, I genuinely welcome, Mr Speaker, the renewed focus on this issue that's come in this Parliament. In the Home Affairs Select Committee, we've heard evidence from Professor Jay, who gave evidence to our committee about her report, which made a number of recommendations in November 2022. She then set out her efforts trying to get the last Conservative government to act on any of those recommendations for a period of over 90 weeks. She spoke about begging two Home Secretaries to take action. She spoke about talking to a Chief of Staff to one of the former Tory Prime Ministers who ignored her. So does the Minister agree with me that rather than words now, action is far more important?
I absolutely agree that action is what is needed, which is exactly why the Home Secretary has written to all police forces in England and Wales seeking to ensure that more arrests are made in these cases, and the task force, the Grooming Gang Task Force, has in the last 9 months made 597 arrests, surpassing the entire previous year, because we are so heavily focused on making sure that these people end up behind bars. I think that Baroness J was ignored by the previous government, and had we had mandatory reporting 10 years ago when the current Home Secretary asked for it, perhaps more people would have been held accountable.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. No child should ever endure sexual exploitation or abuse. Such horrific and unacceptable crimes must have no place in our society. Victims and survivors of these crimes must be at the centre of our thoughts whenever we discuss these matters. But we owe it to them not just to offer words of support, but to deliver justice and bring offenders to account. And this also means taking firm preventative action to protect future generations from such harm. The independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, led by Professor Alexis Jay, published its recommendations in 2022. So could the Minister please set out a clear timetable for the full implementation of the Jay inquiry's recommendations? And does the Minister agree with me that a duty of candour via a Hillsborough law would bring transparency and accountability to any future inquiries? And so can the Government commit to a timetable to delivering this?
I thank the Honourable Lady and agree with her that the inquiries and all of this is only worth anything if we crack on, and that is why when I came before the House before the recess, I said that we would go alongside the publishing of an action plan around the recommendations of the Jay report and also Jay's work into grooming gangs as part of that is all been published as part of a government plan, but it is only the beginning, and actually this is going to take years and years. And with regard to the duty of candour, it seems appalling, doesn't it, that we have to ask people to tell the truth, and yet here we are. Of course, that is what we must be striving for. And like she says, on behalf of the victims and survivors.
Chris Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we've heard, when Alexis Jay came to the Home Affairs Committee, she told how she had pushed and pushed for the implementations of her long, wide-ranging report to be implemented and had heard nothing back from the previous government. So I welcome this urgent question today because this issue requires an urgency we did not see from the previous government. As someone who has worked on protecting the victims of child trafficking, I know we need local responses, but there is an element for a national coordination. Before recess, the Minister announced the creation of the Child Protection Authority. Can she tell us more about the remit and the role that that organisation will have in ensuring that nationwide we clamp down on this horrific crime?
Yes, so as was outlined in Professor Alexis Jay, report, that the need for an overarching authority to ensure accountability across the child protection system was made very clear. And so, as we roll out with the new authority, we are consulting with many experts about exactly what that needs to look like. And ensuring that we get the very, very best possible. Because I am sick of hearing lessons learned in a serious case review about a child rape or a child rape gang or a child death. There needs to be genuine accountability and things need to change.
Committee, Karen Bradley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I agree with the Minister that this has to be victim-centred and that we must put victims at the heart of everything we do. Could she provide more information about when we will know about the remaining 4 locations, and also what will she do to ensure that councils that are reluctant to be part of this are compelled to do so?
I thank the honourable lady, and whilst we have committed to 5, I expect to actually go further, and I'll answer the question of when, and the framework for what local authorities will be tasked with will be released later in May, and as will Baroness Casey's review, which I have committed to publishing. All of these things will rely on each other. I can't stand here and say exactly, I don't know what Baroness Casey is going to say about which particular area and how and what I might need to focus on. I'm going to go on the basis, and I have to say in this debate, this doesn't happen very often. I'm going to go on the basis of facts, and I'm going to follow them wherever they tell me there are victims that need help. That is where I will go.
Cat Smith.
Before being elected to this place, I worked for a national social work organisation, and I know my honourable friend, before she entered this place, worked with victims of crime similarly. And it's so important that we keep those victims forefront in our considerations. And in light of that, can I ask her, with the Child Protection Authority, how she envisages this will be worked up and how victims of crime may be supported by it?
I thank the honourable lady, and what I hear from victims of crime who I speak to and have worked with for many years, as she points out, is that what they fundamentally want is that they don't want the things that happen to them to happen to children today. That's more than anything, more than they want any sort of justice, actually. That is the change they wish to see. And so ensuring that the new authority actually does that and isn't just words on paper will be absolutely vital and will deliver that fundamental victims' need. And we will make sure that when we say we're consulting with experts around the Child Protection Authority, organisations like the NSPCC, who have panels of specialist victims groups who assist them in their work, will be part of that.
Robbie Moore.
Mr. Speaker, in February, a brave group of victims and a leading child abuse lawyer wrote to the Home Secretary warning her that the rape gang scandal across the Bradford district is likely to be one of the most significant of its kind in the UK, and that leaders at Bradford are literally deliberately seeking to avoid the commissioning of an in-depth inquiry for fear of unearthing a very significant problem. The letter still sits with the Home Secretary and outlines the dreadful deadlock that we are in across the Bradford district. Overwhelming victim-led support for a full inquiry, but a council that is deliberately unwilling to commission one. So can I ask the Minister, does she believe that victims and families across Keighley and the wider Bradford district deserve a full rape gangs inquiry? If not, why not? And if she does, what powers will she use to overrule Bradford Council if they continue to ignore victims' wishes?
As I have already said, and once again make praise to the honourable gentleman for raising this issue for a number of years, others have come to it more recently. I make an offer to him, as we have a meeting in our diary, is that I would very much like to meet those victims that he is talking about, and I would gladly sit and meet with them. And if local authorities are found in the work that Baroness Casey is doing around the problem profiling, around police forces in the country, if places are found to have problems, I want him to know that he has my guarantee. I will pursue them.
Mr. Speaker, on Friday in Rochdale, I met with Jane Ward and her colleagues from St Mary's Sexual Assault Referral Centre in Manchester. That centre is staffed by former police officers, former nurses, former social workers, all committed to helping the victims and survivors, particularly of areas like Rochdale that have suffered from grooming gang abuse. And I asked them what their priorities were, and they told me this. Their priorities are cutting the court's backlog, which means cases are waiting until March 2027 to go to trial. They want longer-term funding commitments to help groups like theirs, and they want a wider recognition that most sexual abuse and child rape is perpetrated not by strangers, but by family and friends. Does my honourable friend agree that those should be our priorities too?
I absolutely agree with every one of those asks of the organisation, the Sexual Assault Referral Centre in Rochdale, and I am working very closely with my colleague from the Ministry of Justice to try and do all of those things. And unfortunately, you can't mend a very, very broken system overnight. But I do think, Mr. Speaker, it is very important for me to say here that it is horrible. The cases of grooming gangs that I have come across are some of the worst I have ever seen. And yet, I think that sometimes we do forget how harrowing it is for children who have been raped by their fathers, raped by stepfathers, raped by people in children's institutions. And there is no hierarchy, they all deserve our absolute love, care and our dedication to making action for them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thousands of young, white, British working-class girls have been raped, tortured and abused by Pakistani grooming gangs, and yet this minister here refuses to support a full national public inquiry. And what I want to know is, Mr. Speaker, is she part of the cover-up?
It really doesn't. It doesn't deserve a response, and I actually quite like the honourable gentleman. I have spent my entire career helping. I wonder how many victims he has sat and held hands with in court of grooming gangs. How many he's gone round to their house in the morning to get them out of bed, to get them into a courtroom. There is absolutely no way that I would be part of any cover-up. I will do everything I can under a Home Secretary who will do everything she can to make sure that those who are responsible are held accountable.
Darlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, I would like to thank the front bench today. These are three incredible, formidable women who have not just learnt that this is an issue, but have been working and campaigning on this issue for their entire lives and have come to this place to create change. I wanted to raise the fact that 88% increase of online grooming happened since 2022. 81% of those are young women and girls. Does she think that the social media companies are doing enough? And does she think the police understand the nature of online grooming enough to be able to protect young people from this?
I thank the Honourable Lady, and actually she raises a very, very important point, because often here we are talking about historic cover-ups and failings of the past, whilst we also have to keep our eye on exactly where grooming is going on now and in the future, and she absolutely points out completely rightly that there is an online grooming issue. And what I would say is I have seen really great examples through the task force and work with various different security departments about quite how focused the police enforcement is on this. Do I think that social media companies could be doing more? The answer will always be yes.
Dr. Luca.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And in her opening answer, the Minister says she's determined to get to the truth. She also listed off people who could potentially be caught up in cover-ups, politicians, police, councillors. There are 5 potential inquiries. There are up to 50 child grooming gangs. So how does this work if the councils don't have funding? And more importantly, what if the councils don't actually want to take part? She said she would do everything she possibly can. She could change the law and get backing from this side to make it a compulsion for people to have to give evidence in these kind of cases. Would she consider doing that?
I mean, as I said, I will consider the situation as it unfolds. But what I would say with the amount of money that this government is allocating to do local inquiries is that was, and from a sedentary position, the Shadow Home Secretary says it's not enough. But it is millions more than the zero that the previous government allocated. And when Oldham and Telford wrote to the previous government and asked for help, the answer came there, none. So I will follow the leads that are left for me.
Anna Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The crime of group-based sexual abuse is amongst the most heinous crimes. Our priority must always be to listen to victims and survivors. I recently attended an event organised by West Yorkshire's Mayor Tracy Braben and the Deputy Mayor and Police Commissioner Alison Lowe, where I had the opportunity to meet victims and survivors, as well as fantastic organisations such as Rape Crisis Bradford. And I commend my honourable friend, the Minister, for her brave and tireless work to get justice for victims and survivors, to challenge those who have failed them, and for her commitment to implement the J inquiry in full. Can my honourable friend assure me and my constituents that, as well as action to bring perpetrators to justice, she will support work to prevent such heinous crimes happening again in the future? Thank you.
Absolutely, and I say that with the voice of the victims that I have worked with over the years and spoken to even today, in that the fundamental that they want is for the children who come forward today, to their teacher, to their social worker, to whoever it is, that they don't suffer the same. And keeping our eye on making sure that those are held accountable for the past will only deliver justice if we also look at the now.
Tom Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister's outlined money for local inquiries. I just wondered if she might be able to comment on about what resources would be made available for people who might come forward as a result of those local inquiries. Obviously, there's a backlog of mental health and support and talking therapies and all sorts of resources that people who've been through these horrific experiences may require. They're often provided by local authorities, health bodies and charities whose funding is under pressure. So I wondered if she might be able to elaborate on that and make sure victims are at the heart of this.
I absolutely agree, and so as part of, I remember working in a rape crisis when the Jimmy Savile scandal happened, and it was like being hit by a tsunami. The phone lines lit up, and so in response, as I said before Easter, to the J inquiry, making sure that we have robust mental health support for children who are victims is really important, but also announced that the Home Office would double the amount of money that it provides for adult historic rape victims, recognising that we may bring more people forward and therefore need to improve the access.
Lawrenson.
very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my honourable friend for all of her work and commitment over many, many years. Can she confirm that the government is committed to building trust with victims and survivors of child exploitation and abuse? My heart goes out to them. But does she agree with me that the government's focus on tackling violence against women and girls will turn the tide and shed a light, sunlight being the best disinfectant?
I mean, absolutely, because there is systematic problems with how women and girls are treated, whether that's by cover-ups being ignored. I'm afraid to say there is still a cultural sense that women still feel like if they come forward, will they be believed? Yeah. And so we have to fundamentally look at all of the systems across government, which myself and my colleague leading on the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy will do.
Neil O'Brien. Mr. Speaker, the government is blocking a national inquiry into the rape gangs and says instead that we should have 5 local inquiries. But we know that there have been 50 places where these things have happened, and we know that in some of those places like Bradford, the local council are the ones blocking a local inquiry. And we know that the local authorities often don't have the powers they need to requisition evidence and summon witnesses. Indeed, this whole story began when Oldham Council wrote after the election to the Minister asking for the national powers that they needed. Why did the Minister refuse to meet with them?
I appreciate that this is where the whole story began for the honourable gentleman. It is not where the whole story began. Oldham Council had written, I believe, twice before to the previous government, as had Telford written to the previous government. So I'm afraid to say, for me, this story started many...
Order. To say it's simply untrue is trying to suggest the Minister. I think we've got to get this right.
Mr. Speaker, on the point of order, it's not correct that Oldham Council had written to the last government. An individual councillor had. Oldham Council had not. That's the whole point.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure if there's been a mistake, the Minister will correct that. Minister.
I will check the record and make sure, but what I am absolutely certain of is the number of times that Telford Council wrote and asked. I'm not aware that Rotherham, in fact I am aware that not Rotherham, not Rochdale, not Telford, not Oxford, not any other places that have had an inquiry have ever been given a single bean by the previous government to do that work, and yet here we are and we will do it.
Elsie Blunt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Communities across Hayward and Middleton North, however resilient, still bear the scars of these appalling and cowardly acts. And I'm grateful to the Minister for her continued engagement and resolve in addressing the cruel legacy of these crimes. What steps are being taken by her department to learn from the healthcare practitioners, support workers and others who were active at the time of these crimes and initial inquiries to make sure they can provide their insights and expertise to inform the commendable present-day efforts to secure justice for the women and girls?
Thank you, and I commend her work, and I know that she is coming to see me with some of those healthcare workers, a woman, Sarah Robotham, who I know well, who working in sexual health services was one of the whistleblowers in the Rochdale case. We absolutely need to make sure, as we make progress, that we are listening to anybody who interacts with children and that people have space to come forward and speak up. The mandatory duty to report will go some way, but absolutely changing the culture of ensuring that people are listened to and heard, and in the health setting they know this better than in most, is definitely something we will be learning.
Rupert Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Despite multiple promises of inquiries from political parties across this House, it seems that the only operational investigation will be the rape gang inquiry, which I have privately launched. It's garnered cross-party support, and I implore MPs from any political persuasion to align with our cause. Will the Minister today commit to engaging in a cooperative manner with the investigation and make herself available to answer questions from our expert panel?
What I would say to the honourable gentleman is that I delight in his interest in this, and what I would say to every single member in this House is that I will work with absolutely anybody to make this better, I'm more than happy to meet with him and talk about any level of cooperation, because if people are genuinely here to try and stop the grooming gangs in this country, I am genuinely here to help.
Adam Thompson.
Deputy Speaker, the Minister has kindly confirmed today that the Casey review will be published in May. Can I first welcome that? But could I ask, could she elaborate on whether she expects the review, given that it's going to explain the next stages of the process, while it obviously cannot include, while she obviously cannot preface the review, can she explain whether she expects it to include a framework for conducting the local inquiries?
I thank my honourable friend. No, I absolutely don't expect it to do that. What Baroness Casey is seeking to do is an audit on the problem profiles around the country and looking at exactly where the data does exist, doesn't exist, where there are failings, and it was intended to be a rapid audit. The framework for good local inquiries is being worked on by a series of experts, including Tom Crowther and people like Alexis Jay, and the fund that local authorities can apply to will also be published by the end of May.
Richard Holden.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm sure that the Minister shares my concerns that to date no one has been convicted of covering up the horrendous crimes, including sexual abuse and gang rape. What is the plan to ensure that people are held to account? Because it's quite clear, as the Minister said in her early remarks, that these cover-ups have perpetuated these crimes, not just historically, but actually through, potentially through crimes which are continuing to happen to this very day.
I totally agree with the honourable gentleman. I wish to see people who covered this up. I wish to see them held accountable within the law and the frameworks that exist. And actually, if people have concerns about things and would like to bring them forward to me on specific cases, then the police have the power currently to investigate those things, obviously within the law as it exists. Had mandatory reporting laws existed sooner, we might have been in a better situation. But I completely agree. It's appalling that no one's been held to account.
John Woodcock.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I thank my honourable friend for the continuing hard work that she puts into this issue, and particularly welcome the commitment to introduce mandatory reporting for suspected sexual abuse, something that was recommended 11 years ago by the current Prime Minister as outgoing Director of Public Prosecutions, accepted by the then Prime Minister David Cameron. But we then had to go through 4 more Tory Prime Ministers and 7 more Tory Home Secretaries before it started to be implemented by this Labour government. Can I assure her that she has my full support on this matter and just to continue and carry on the good work?
Thank you.
Ayub Khan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Child sexual exploitation is a vile and despicable crime that cuts across all sections of our society, perpetrated by individuals with blackened souls. They come from all races, all creeds, religions, backgrounds. All law-abiding citizens want justice for the victims of these horrific acts. Will the Minister agree that our focus must be on supporting the victims of exploitation and on stopping the perpetrators, but that it must be done in such a way that does not fan the flames of hate to innocent groups of people who would, like all law-abiding citizens, condemn these acts?
I mean, of course I agree, and I want to see perpetrators held accountable. What I can say without any doubt, though, that in the past there have been people who have, as other local inquiries have told us, that people have covered up for seemingly, whether asked to or not, multicultural reasons, and that cannot stand. That said, we will always follow the facts and make sure that we are dealing completely and utterly with that.
Gregor Poynton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I strongly welcome the Home Secretary commissioning of Baroness Casey to conduct the national audit. And further to my honourable friend from Milton Keynes Central's question, can the Minister confirm if the growing prevalence of online group-based sexual exploitation of children will form the basis of form part of that report? And can she also provide any update on what the Home Office's response to this growing crime?
I thank the honourable gentleman and say that absolutely group-based grooming with some terrible instances of children globally being groomed or British children being groomed from abroad or vice versa is something that we are acutely aware of. Whether it will form part of what Baroness Casey finds, I shall leave to Baroness Casey to say. However, what I will say is that it absolutely forms part of the strategy of work for preventing child sexual abuse that the government have laid out.
Charlie Dewhurst.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm concerned that some of the people involved in these local authority inquiries could be the very same individuals who have covered up these heinous crimes for years. So why is the Minister so unwilling to seek justice for the victims of these child rape gangs through a national statutory inquiry?
I want to be clear that local inquiries have to be independent. So the independent chair of the Telford inquiry or Professor Alexis Jay was the chair of the Rotherham inquiry. They are independent inquiries and they are not run by local authorities.
Laura Kirksmith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last week I caught up with Safe Step, a remarkable charity in my constituency of Aylesbury which supports victims and survivors of child sexual exploitation and abuse. We discussed the many ways in which the trauma remains with these victims and survivors and how important accountability is for them as they rebuild their lives. Madam Deputy Speaker, my constituents who have suffered this appalling abuse need closure and they need change, and I pay tribute to the Minister for her vital and persistent work to this end, including the work to establish the 5 local inquiries. Can she set out some further examples of what areas like mine can do to ensure that the vile perpetrators are brought to justice?
I thank my honourable friend. What I would say is that the Grooming Gangs Task Force that will work with local police force areas, the whole point of it is that it will go into work operationally with local police forces to ensure best practice. That has then led to this increase of nearly, since it was set up, 1,100 arrests in group-based child sex abuse. And so there is a huge amount of resource in that centre, and I would encourage local areas and local police forces always to be working with them.
Jim Allister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, surely there is something fundamentally flawed with the process of local inquiries if the option of holding the inquiry rests with the defaulting authorities. And isn't there equally something out of kilter with the government's approach to public inquiries, when at this moment it's about to spend up to tens of millions of pounds on a public inquiry to meet the political demands of the Finucane family, but denies a national inquiry to this national scandal of child rape gangs?
I thank the honourable gentleman. I won't answer the point that I think strays slightly from this particular urgent question, but what I will say is I wonder if he has read the 200-page document of the National Inquiry into Group-Based Child Sexual Abuse that already exists and had statutory powers. And if not, or I say to anyone in the House, I would really, really encourage people to do that.
Katrina Murray.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for the responses to questions. As has often been said in this chamber, child sexual abuse happens across all sectors of society, to girls and to boys, and there is no hierarchy in victims. As the Minister has already said, that every single one of those young people comes into contact with professionals on a daily basis who have got the power to change their lives for the better. Can she outline what work's being done in advance of the mandatory reporting to work with the professional bodies who register those professionals to ensure that this can happen?
I do, and I thank the honourable lady for mentioning boys and giving me the opportunity, because I've made a promise to one of the Oldham victims when I met her, that I would always say that this was grooming gangs was a thing that could happen to boys and girls, because it was her son who had lost his life, and so I thank her for allowing me to do that. What I would say in preparation, that there will be a delay to the rolling out of mandatory reporting, exactly because making sure that the guidance and the regulation that sits behind it and the training that will have to be put in place, not so much necessarily for social workers, etc., who have that sort of training, but we are talking about sports coaches, volunteers. There is huge numbers of institutions that work with children, and getting this right rather than rushing it is the most important thing.
Sir Ashley Fox.
Madam Deputy Speaker, my constituents are horrified by the government's failure to order a national inquiry into the child rape gang scandal. Does the Minister share the concerns raised by Sir Trevor Phillips that the decisions made by the government appear to be obviously political and designed to avoid offending Muslim voters of Pakistani origin?
Agree with that. What I would say is, politically, the easiest thing for me to have done in this situation would have been to capitulate, but I don't think it's the right thing to do. I believe from my years of work and speaking to the victims and working in Telford with those victims about what changed afterwards, I believe, genuinely, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't stand here if I didn't believe it. And the idea that I am trying to protect something of myself, this process has brought, I have to say, it has not been protecting of me. And there's absolutely, it's frankly a disgraceful thing to say.
James McMurdoch.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is clearly a deeply distressing topic that affects the whole House, and I fully accept that the Minister is affected as much as anyone. That being said, it is not clear to me why we would not do absolutely everything within our power to get to the bottom of this, and that includes a full national inquiry and all the powers that come with it. So would you please explain to me why we won't have that and why you see us having that as capitulating?
The reason I think that what we have laid out is better is because it is about taking action now in areas where it is needed. A national inquiry, which we already had, which took 7 years and wrote a 200-page dossier on group-based sexual abuse. There was a 200-page dossier specifically on that, and it took 2 years just to do that, and it made really good recommendations. I genuinely believe that the best thing for me to do is to crack on with doing those.
Joy Morrissey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can the Minister provide assurances from the dispatch box as to how the government is going to compel councils like Bradford, who have refused to participate in this inquiry or in a local inquiry? And this may seem self-evident, but councils that are going to be liable for child protection, who are probably going to be found to be at fault, are probably not going to want to participate in a local inquiry. So that is why we're asking for a national inquiry. So please provide what the government is going to do to compel those councils to give evidence so that justice can be served for these victims.
What I would say to the Honourable Lady is that I shall wait for the review being undertaken by Baroness Casey and what it tells me, and I will act on that.
And the final question from the backbench is to Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for her honest answers. The Minister has spoken a number of times on this issue, and I thank her for her care and consideration of the matter. But I'm always, the Minister will know, I always try to be respectful, and therefore my question is one that has to be asked. However, what remains clear is that there is a public perception that government is drawing a line under actions that simply do not deserve to be forgotten. In order to learn the lesson that these dreadful actions need to teach, I believe we need a full and open investigation, and government needs to and must pacify the general public. We have an obligation to society, and more so to the vulnerable of our society. So will the Minister confirm the investigation that the public and the members of the House believe the scale of these issues warrant. Thank you.
I appreciate the honourable gentleman's desire to always be respectful, and I shall pay it back in kind and say that there is absolutely no way that the government wishes for the past to be forgotten, for a line to be drawn. That is absolutely the opposite of what I want. I want every single perpetrator rounded up and locked up. I want every single victim to feel supported, and I want everybody who covered it up to be held accountable for that. And because the chuntering of who doesn't always show respect, the Home Secretary, the Shadow Home Secretary, what I would say is the idea that people are held accountable by public inquiries is not the case. Nobody has gone to prison following the Hillsborough inquiry. Nobody, the blood inquiry. Anyone gone to prison? No. So be careful what you are promising people can be achieved.
That concludes the urgent question.